Many of you have been enjoying the Invisible Library series by Genevieve Cogman. Her first book in 2015 was soon followed by 7 others. As well as successful authorship, she has a Master of Science in Statistics with medical applications and works for the National Health Service in Britain. She kindly agreed to this interview and is joining us today with a 5-hour time difference from her home in Northern England. Ladies and gentlemen, dragons and fae, librarians everywhere, please welcome Genevieve Cogman. Genevieve, welcome and thank you very much for making time for us here in Canada.
I'm very flattered to be asked. Thank you for inviting me.
So let's get right to it. Canada is among many places you've traveled, visiting Toronto's Royal Ontario Museum. What impression did Canada make, and would you like to see more of it?
I would absolutely like to see more of it. When I went there, I was visiting a friend, so I spent most of my time hanging out with her with, things like trips to the museum and to the local bookshop and so on. And it was only for a few days, it was in the city of Toronto rather than actually going outside and seeing more of the rest of Canada. But I would love to see more. It was a very nice, pleasant, friendly place. And so it is on my long list of places I would like to see more of.
Once we can all travel again, right?
Oh, yes. I have to admit, at the moment, whatever my government says, I'm not convinced things are over, so I'm still masking and being careful.
Me as well.
Good.
So now that the Invisible Library series is on pause for a time, it's unlikely Irene Winters will be sent to retrieve any books in Canada. But if the series is revisited, might you have any plan to send her to Canada? After all, we are notorious for our Canadian winters.
It would certainly be entertaining to see Irene and Kai having to cope with a Canadian winter. My friend in Canada actually sent me a pair of studded boot straps for, which I don't get to use very often, but if we have a bad English winter to the extent that there's frozen slush all over the pavements, they come in very useful. So yeah, sure. It is. I would have to decide what time period to do it in though, and if it's regular Canadian, real world time, or if it was some alternate world where Canadian history took a different path. I'd probably have to do some research if I decided that, to work out what would be fun and entertaining and not insulting, really.
So the Invisible Library series, in a nutshell, it features a junior librarian spy named Irene Winters, who is one of many librarians acting as peacekeepers between the dragon's world of order and the fae's world of chaos. To keep these worlds balanced, the politically neutral librarians enter these worlds, each with the purpose of retrieving a rare edition of a unique to that world book, which if left there, would upset the balance too drastically. Irene's assignments are haunted by dangerous complications. Anything else you care to add?
Well, that's what makes the story fun, isn't it? If she had a conveniently easy life where everything went smoothly, it wouldn't be half as much fun to read. No, actually, I think you've read book 8, haven't you?
I have.
Then you may remember there's one world which they go to find a particular book where she and Kai have been in the past, and apparently it's just so nice and peaceful and orderly that it bored them rigid last time they were there. Nothing, sort of nice relaxation, but not really as much fun for a story as usual.
I love cheering for Irene. Pardon the pun, but she can literally think on her feet, call up the language in a flash, change costumes, plans, and priorities at a moment's notice. She has many talents, a fearless, brave spirit, is no one's fool, and functions brilliantly despite the elusiveness of both food and rest. Moreover, she wears many hats in the course of her career like real-life librarians do. Are some of these traits yours as well?
Maybe in my daydreams, I would like to be that cool, but occasionally I've been reasonably quick thinking, but I'm afraid I couldn't claim most of the rest of it. But in my daydreams, I would like to be a cool adventurer like that. So, and certainly I've got loads of books.
Yes, I'm sure you do. You feel that Irene resembles John Steed from the Avengers TV series, and I quite agree. So the dragon Kai, he would assume Emma Peel's role, and Peregrine Vale is the perfect Sherlock Holmes type. My congratulations, though, to you on creating the character Albrecht. He is evil perfected and absolutely hell-bent on destroying the library. Have you ever thought of devoting a book to Albrecht before he turned against the library, or a prequel with the dragons?
I have to admit, I don't think I'd do one with Albrecht. I think in some respects it would be giving too much away about him if I did anything that involved, well, you know how much of the plot line about him came out in books 7 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I think before everything went down, before the bad thing happened, he was a fairly regular librarian. I mean, certainly he had hijinks and adventures, but so do most of them. So I'm afraid, no, he's not really one I've thought about. I have thought about doing more of the goings on with the dragons, but I find part of the fun with them is the crossover with what's happening with librarians and fae. I think if I was just telling a story about dragons, I would need to do a lot more research into background, history, character, plotting, names, all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of work.
Well, yeah, I admit. I mean, heaven knows I've been doing enough research on my current trilogy.
Oh, I know. We're going to get to that in just a minute. I can't wait. So your description of the perfect librarian is calm, cool, collected, intelligent, multilingual, a crack shot, a martial artist, an Olympic level runner, a good swimmer, an expert thief, and a genius con artist. So let's add in Irene's diplomacy, politeness, ability to diffuse situations, a good memory, ability to think on her feet, blend in as needed, and read people to a T. That is a tall order, and yet her resume resounds with all of it.
I admit I do get annoyed sometimes with the sort of hero in a hard-boiled detective or an adventure story who is cool, rude, offensive to people who happen to be in a higher rank than him because he's annoyed or because they're in his way. I wanted to write a character who was quite capable of making herself be polite if it's appropriate for the situation. I mean, thoughts are something else, but biting your tongue is sometimes useful in the real world and in fiction as well.
I just say,
sometimes
well,
you just have to. Sometimes you just have to smile and take it, don't you? And wherever you are, I mean, not that Irene can't be rude. She's quite capable of being very rude. It's just you pick and choose your times.
Yes, I know. Pick your battles, as it were.
Exactly.
So now the language is the librarian's brilliant ability to command objects or people to do something quite specific. Have you ever been asked to say something in the language?
Well, I'm glad to say that I haven't, though I could argue that if I said it, then you wouldn't know about it because the language would sound like your own native language, wouldn't it? I mean, if I were to say, apple out of my apple over there, move, you would not be able to prove it didn't happen.
You could bewitch us without our even knowing it.
Yes. I mean, the language owes a lot to other authors before me. I mean, there's Ursula Le Guin. I always forget how to pronounce her name, which is very embarrassing. When she wrote The Wizard of Earthsea and the Earthsea books, and you may remember in that the wizards have to learn the true names of everything in order to command them. And the concept of knowing the true names of things in order to command them in magic and other things goes back quite a very long way. So I'm hardly doing anything incredibly new. I'm just putting my own new touch on it.
And it's a really crafty new touch. I love it.
Thank you.
So in Irene's library, it's not just books, but entire worlds that are cataloged. Can you explain Beta-001?
That would be the first world the library had recorded that was of the beta designation. And I would have to go and check my notes. I remember that the library roughly catalogues things as either being worlds with magic in them, worlds which are more technology orientated, or worlds which have both magic and technology. And the number designation is, I think, is basically the order they were discovered in. So it's not always logical in terms of the temporal period that world currently is in, or how, well, I'm not going to say how different from the real world, because then you'd have to define which is the real world, wouldn't you? I mean, everyone is convinced their own world is the real world.
Oh, yes, yes, and the very best world too, probably.
Some librarians do come from happier worlds than others.
Yes. So Irene works with dragons, which are creatures of order, and fae, which are creatures of chaos. If she were impelled to change, might she choose dragon because they love order as librarians do?
Bearing in mind that she can't change. They're a totally normal human being. If you were to take them to a high order world or a high chaos world for a very long time, there's a possibility they might change towards that thing, but Irene's library brand would stop her changing. So she is basically going to be human for the rest of her life. So I'm afraid that unless you want to write fanfic about it, she is not going to turn into a dragon and go off with Kai for the rest of eternity. Sorry about that.
And that's another book entirely.
Yeah. I think she would argue that while she appreciates the dragon's organization and the lack of stereotyping, there are equally a number of problems, like having to fit into dragon society, responsibilities, lack of being able to go off and do her own thing. And so I think she would politely say she does prefer to stay human in between, that the whole point of keeping the library is being able to be human and in between rather than having to be one or the other.
True. So if it were Irene's birthday tomorrow, what would she like besides having all the day off to read?
Ooh, tempting. I think about saying she would like X book is that there's always more books to get. I mean, if you say, a totally new Sherlock Holmes story I've never read before, there probably is one somewhere in the library someone could find for her. Or she might say, I would like some nice quality brandy, or some Blue Mountain Java coffee, or a nice new coat with large pockets. I think she doesn't have anything she's desperately waiting for or desiring. It's when she wants something, it's more something spurred on by the needs of the moment.
Mm-hmm. So these books, in my opinion, would make a first-class television series. Have there been any discussions to that end?
Sadly, not that I know of. I mean, there have been a couple of people who emailed me to say, sort of who I talked about movie rights, and I pointed them up to my agent, but I've heard nothing since, so I must assume that nothing came of it. So unfortunately, I can't actually go shopping around myself. The best I can do is hope someday, out of the sky, an offer will descend on golden wings, and, well, I can daydream.
I hope
it would be
does.
nice.
I would love to see it, really. You could make a cameo.
I used to promise my friends at work that they could, if it ever happened, they can all show up in the scene in book 1 at the Silver's party and get eaten by alligators.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be fun. I'll be an extra in that one.
Well, it would have to be a big party. It would have to be a big party orgy scene, sort of all sorts of dubious things going on in dark corners. And dancing.
The costuming would be crazy.
Absolutely. When Silver throws a party, everyone parties.
Oh, yes. Oh, I would just like to see it for a number of reasons, but I'm quite curious about the librarian's brand, which we never get to see. And another one is seeing Kai transform into a dragon would be amazing. And then one scene in particular is perfect for a visual audience when Irene and Vale rescue Kai. With his elemental affinity for water, he commands water to rise up, carrying them all out of the Venetian prison. I'd love to see that.
So would I. Mind you, I wouldn't mind seeing the bit where they find him chained up in the tower and rescue him. And he's, sort of, is this a daydream? Is it really you? And Irene is, pinch, yes.
There's so many moments, really, through all the books.
Yes. Thank you.
So I'm sure this scenario has crossed your mind. If you could steal any book from any parallel universe to keep and read for yourself, what would it be?
Oh, It does tend to depend a bit on what I am currently enthusing about. I mean, if I've just discovered a brand new author I'm enjoying. But actually, what I would really like, have you ever come across the author Barry Hewitt?
I have not.
Hughart. He wrote 3 books set in a sort of alternate fantasy China: Bridge of Birds, Story of the Stone, and 8 Skilled Gentlemen. Unfortunately, he didn't get much support from his publisher, and sort of they never got any more written, even though the stories hinted there were more things going on. So I would love to be able to go to alternate universe where he was incredibly popular, got loads of support, wrote more stories, and I could read them.
I'm going to look up that author, really. Oh, now that looks good. Oh my, I am definitely going to look those up.
They are great fun, and the first is often thought to be the best, so good start. But yeah, there you are. That is what I would go to alternate universe to get my hands on. Unfortunately, he has died in the meantime, so definitely not getting any more in this universe. We will never find out about what happens in the confrontation between, let me see, what was it? The confrontation with the white serpent in the mysterious mountain cavern of winds. So, you know, we will never find out why that happens or all the other interesting things that get hinted at.
You might have to take up the challenge and finish it.
I couldn't. Well, he's just a completely different style from me. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant writer. And, you know, it is quite possible, quite fair to say, I love his stuff, but I don't think I could do what he does as well as he does it.
Well, he might have said the same of you. You never know.
Oh, thank you.
So let's chat about your new trilogy, based on the Scarlet Pimpernel and set in revolutionary France. The aristocrats are vampires facing the guillotine. Methinks a very different protagonist awaits us. What else can you tell us about Scarlet?
To be fair, not all the aristocrats are vampires. It's just that vampires are regular citizens in some parts of the world where the story's set. And quite often they are aristocrats because they're usually rich and have lots of money. And so, you know, when the revolution came in France, they were among the first to the guillotine. Did you know that one of the insults used in revolutionary France was sanguinocrat? So literally sanguinocrat. So naturally I had to borrow that one. So, as usual, the Scarlet Pimpernel is saving poor innocent people from the guillotine, usually aristocrats. Funny how that happens. And the protagonist is a fairly normal maidservant who gets dragged into the whole situation and finds herself with unexpected responsibilities and unexpected gifts. And also having to cope with all these aristocrats hanging around and going. And, you know, we'll put it this way, when something goes wrong, it's never the aristocrat that gets blamed, is it? It's always the poor girl.
Okay, I'm more intrigued than ever over this one. And thank you for pronouncing that word. I was going to ask you about that because my pronunciation was not going to be nearly as good as yours.
Thank you. My French pronunciation is a bit wobbly, but hopefully it was okay. I apologise to any people out there who know it better, who could still do it better than I could. Sorry, my father used to be a lecturer in French literature before he retired. So I've had the benefit of a bit more exposure to French than a lot of people. But even then, I know how much I don't know.
And so that maybe that was what led you into wanting to write about this time period is his interest?
I think that was part of it. But also the fact that I remember watching Scarlet Pimpernel films when I was a lot younger, you know, and then going out into the garden and getting a twig and going, you know, ha, ha, you know, I am Scarlet Pimpernel fencing with evil guards and doing the pleasure, my dear Chauvelin, is all mine, in a cool and dramatic way, and stuff like. And when I was younger, I read some of the books and I thought they were brilliant. When I got a bit older, I read them again and I spotted a number of issues in them which, well, you know, when you read something that is what you call politely a book of its time, in some of the attitudes in it, and you get annoyed by some of them, and you can't stop thinking that others point out flaws in the character which actually make them more interesting to have around. But I mean, some of that will come out in my books, so hopefully, so touch wood.
I just absolutely can't wait. I have to wait till autumn, apparently, when it comes out.
Thank you. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm currently waiting to get my edits back from my editor, though maybe by the time this interview comes out, you will have got me them. So I'm fretting a bit and trying not to get too nervous.
So despite COVID being in all of our lives, a full-time position and your many hobbies and an equally time-consuming literary career, has there been any time to visit your local library, and do you have a library card?
We do have a local library in Leeds. I do have a library card, but I have to confess I haven't been there for a while. I've got a large enough to read stack waiting for me here, both physical and ebooks and PDFs. And I haven't had anything I particularly wanted to research that I didn't already have some material on. I have to admit that the last couple of years, when I had family asking for what do you want for Christmas, your birthday, I've said, can you give me research material about the French Revolution, about George in England? So that was convenient, wasn't it?
Oh, I'll say it was. So let me share your dedication in the Untold story, which, by the way, for viewers, is your latest book. I hope it's on camera here. Of the 8 that you've done, the Untold story is the newest, and I loved it. So your dedication was to my old school, Christ's Hospital, where I proudly held a position of junior librarian and spent as much time as I could in the library. Did you consider a career as a librarian?
I think I did, till I found out it would actually involve more than just sitting around reading books in the library. I mean, when I was there, it may be different now. That was over 30 years ago. There was the actual staff librarian who did most of the actual work, and a few pupil librarians who did things like shelve piles of books occasionally and give it and hang around and chat. And well, you know how it is. It was not exactly hard labor. And at the time, it seemed absolutely brilliant stuff. But in retrospect, and given all the many things that a librarian actually has to do in real life, I don't think I would be that happy. I wouldn't get as much time with the books themselves.
That is the case. We do an awful lot of different things these days. I love this observation of yours. Libraries are celebrations of books. They're created to shelter and share books. What importance do you feel libraries have in the world?
Vitally important. I mean, as you have said, they shelter and share books. They give people access to all sorts of books, a lot more than they would necessarily have even with the internet at home. The librarian can direct people where to research. I mean, you know far more than I do how much a librarian does. I just have a glorified spy librarian. But if you want books from outside your own home or outside your own budget, you need the library. And people need to be able to read in order to... I was going to say people need to be able to read in order to expand. That's not entirely fair. There are lots of ways people can expand their knowledge, expand their perceptions, expand their points of view and their empathy. But libraries do provide very good ways of doing all those things. And the more practical research for areas of interest, work, study, whatever, research or applications for jobs or careers, finding out that other people love books too and being able to share that with them.
Well, books are powerful forces indeed. Your invisible library has drawn people deeper into their own libraries and increased their appreciation for them. Is that what you intended?
It wasn't what I planned when I wrote it, but I'm really pleased to hear that. I mean, when I was writing it, I was telling a story. I'm delighted if that was one of the end products. I did not actually sort of write it. I mean, I didn't actually write it thinking, oh, I must write a story that will make people go to libraries. But I'm very pleased to hear they have gone to libraries.
I would love to have a valid library card to access Irene's library. Stroll the endless corridors, request access to a very rare book, step through a portal and meet a dragon or two, as one does.
I would too. So what book would you go for?
Oh my gosh. There are so many. I mean, first I'd probably get lost looking at covers and looking for authors that I loved, and then the titles would draw me in, and I would be there till the end of time, the end of my time.
Yes, same here.
And that's the endless rabbit hole, the best rabbit hole.
Exactly.
So what works of fiction do you recommend to friends and family, and what are you reading now?
I'm currently reading, I was lucky enough to get an early copy of the Atlas 6.
Ooh.
Which is basically 6 magicians who've been offered the opportunity of a lifetime. And so it's an early copy, so I can't actually share it around yet. But it's great fun. There are 6 magicians invited to compete for an incredible prize, a place within the secretive Alexandrian society, whose custodians guard knowledge from ancient civilizations and enjoy incredible powers. But, you know, if they can prove themselves over a year, they'll survive, most of them. So that one's being great fun. And
I'm
also,
sure.
it's basically all about the treatment of children during Victorian days and written with a definite sense of humour. So, you know, with issues like about the things they believed at the time, like which positions and room decor will help you conceive a son? How much beer, wine, cyanide, and heroin should you consume while pregnant? How to select the best peasant teat for your child? Which foods won't turn your children into sexual deviants? And other fun things that were believed at the time.
Oh my gosh.
I would like to claim it's research. I'm just enjoying reading it, to be honest.
So I'll tell you one thing. I am very impressed that at age 7, you read The Lord of the Rings. Was that the earliest nudge towards fantasy before Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman, and Sherlock Holmes weighed in?
I'm not sure. I mean, I suppose you could say it really started when my parents read me The Hobbit as a bedtime story, me and my brother, a couple of years before that. But they read other bedtime stories as well. It wasn't just The Hobbit. And when I read The Lord of the Rings at 7, I have to say there were a lot of things I didn't understand. I mean, a lot of it, you were just reading it and cheerfully letting the whole thing wash over you, and story, fun, drama, Eowyn, I am no man, you know, hobbits, ring. And it's only when you get a bit older and read it with more of a perceptive eye that you start appreciating things like the tragedy of Boromir and Denethor and what's going on with the elves. And then you read the Silmarillion, find out more about Galadriel and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that you can't still enjoy it at 7 years old. You just appreciate different things about it.
So which fictional character would you like to meet in real life?
I'm afraid I can't really answer that. There's so many of them that are really fun to meet. I mean, from the Stephen Rust stories of Tregeara, from the ones that are the homage to the Three Musketeers, you know, the Phoenix Guard, 5,000 years after, 500 years after, and so on. I would love to meet the central 4 characters who are homage to the Musketeers. But then again, you think I would love to meet someone like Sherlock Holmes, but you think, would he actually want to meet me? Would he actually be really impressed by me, want to talk to me, be interested in me, or would I just be one more enthusiast who got a polite excuse and then escape out the back door?
I'm sure he'd love to meet you.
Oh, very kind. But yeah, all the excellent characters, you do wonder, would they actually want to meet me, or would it be just a case of polite hello, goodbye? So I just don't know. But still, lots of them. Right up Terry Pratchett, you've got the Patrician, you've got Vimes, you've got Granny Weatherwax. In the Earthsea series, there's Ged. In Barbara Hambly, there's the Vampire series, the Darwoth series, the Benjamin January series, all of which have loads of interesting characters. And sorry, I was looking at my bookshelves for inspiration. And yeah, lots of characters who one would like. I'm even Sir Percy Blakeney, but one would like to meet. Though if he was doing his usual total socialite idiot dandy act, he probably might not be so interesting for conversation unless you wanted to discuss cravats and fashion.
So you have been telling stories to yourself since you first learned to daydream. That is perhaps the gentlest and most appropriate segue into a writing career. Do you agree?
I found it a good segue, but I don't know what transitions other people have found, but I found it a good one myself. Because I suppose you start off telling the stories about yourself, then you start telling about other people, and you give the other people the cool moments.
You have a fascinating imagination. Can you walk me through your writing process?
If I usually start with an outline, this is partly because these days publishers want an outline. You don't get to, well, unless you're Stephen King or someone, you don't get to walk in and say, I'm thinking of writing a series about so-and-so, please throw money at me. You have to do things like present them with an outline and discuss a time schedule. So these days I have an outline in varying degrees of specificity. And basically I just sit at my computer and try and slog out a first draft. And then I go back and edit it, put in things, adjust according to notes, adjust according to comments from beta readers. Unfortunately, there is absolutely nothing there is no other way of doing it other than getting the words on the page.
Mm-hmm. The hardest thing of all.
Certainly a very hard thing. Different people find things differently. Some people love doing the editing. Some people loathe it. Some people love letting the first inspiration splurge out on the page. Some people find it sort of a grinding millstone word after word. Every author is differently, I think.
So similar libraries, hidden or world connecting, include Terry Pratchett's Librarian from the Discworld series and Neil Gaiman's Lucian from Sandman. And you've said, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. So as far as I'm concerned, with a brilliant series behind you and a highly anticipated trilogy to come, one might say you are on the way to becoming a literary giant yourself.
That is incredibly flattering to hear, and it's lovely to hear, but at the same time, I would rather not get too comfortable yet. There's always better to get. I mean, if I were to say I'm already perfect, then I would only degrade from that. So I'd rather say I'm pleased with how it's gone so far. I would like to get better. I would like to keep on going.
Well said.
Thank you.
You wrote a wonderful piece called Snow and Salt for Strange Horizons. That was well done. It was just a short piece, but I loved that.
Thank you.
I am very keen. Oh, it was. Well, yeah, just a few years. I'm very keen to read your contribution to the 2019 anthology Wonderland, in which all the stories are different approaches to Alice in Wonderland. And yours is entitled The White Queen's Pawn. Do you play chess?
A bit, though I haven't for a while. My father taught me, and I used to play against him when I was younger. But I have to admit that we haven't played for quite a while now.
Nor have I. I had to look up The White Queen's Pawn, and I found it was the second most popular opening chess move used by masters and beginners alike. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I really want to read that story now.
Thank you. Well, there are a lot of excellent stories in that book. It's fun to read. Different authors, we all got told to do what you want, with a little bit of, but can we just check out to make sure we aren't all doing the same thing?
That was clever. So you have also done some freelance writing for role-playing companies like Exalted and GURPS, if I'm saying that correctly. What is this type of writing like, and did this experience help you build the worlds you would someday have in your novels?
The bits of writing I did, some of them were chunks of description or background, and in one case I was trying to present an adaptation of another author's fictional world. That was when I wrote GURPS for Kosigan, which was basically, brief digression, the GURPS system stands for General Universal Role-Playing System. The idea is that you have a system you can adapt for any sort of setting or any sort of story just by adding bolt-ons, if you like, rules for fantasy or rules for science fiction, rules for superheroes, vampires, whatever. So you have the basic rule book, then a lot of different source books, so you can play the game you want to play for that one. So I had the chance to write a source book based on the Miles Vorkosigan books by Lewis McMaster Bujold. And it was basically providing background, on the stories, the geography, the main characters, the setting of that world. And that was very useful in terms of actually looking at text and trying to extract the facts from it, and also trying to do justice to a brilliant set of books. I love that. I love Bujold. She's a brilliant writer. And so there was that. There was the couple of times where I just got the chance to write an adventure, and I was told, sort of, here are the ground rules, here's the base, here is the system. In some cases, choose what you want and work from there. One really important thing I did get from all of this was learning how to be edited, because basically there is always editing. So I learned important facts like how to try and extract the relevant things that the editor says to you and apply them in order to improve the work. And also, very importantly, how not to throw a strop about it. I mean, let me be honest, unless very few people actually like the first moments of here are your edit notes, unless they happen to be everything is perfect and I loved it, which is possible, I'm not denying it. But when there's something like, this bit needs fixing, I don't think this bit came through fully, would you consider adjusting this, or this bit really doesn't sound right. It is very hard not to feel your back go up at least a little bit, even though it is the right thing to be done and it will produce a better product. It's a fairly human reaction, I think. So I think it's important to learn to accept that and work with it and just move forward rather than get stroppy about it.
Those are wise words indeed. They really are.
I have heard stories from people whose editors were not that brilliant, but so far I've been very lucky. Mine have always been great.
Oh, good. So to quote you again, if I may, memories are an alternate world of their own. So Irene's typical workday involves journeying through worlds and times. Her librarians do not age while in the library. So for many of your characters, the passage of time is not something they think about in the same way we would. How are you enjoying the passage of time in your own life?
Well, sometimes I think, am I really 49? And then I think I am, aren't I? Oh dear. I don't know. I look back and I think things I would have done differently. I would have worked harder at this point. I would have not said this stupid thing at that point. I would have perhaps made a different decision. There are some things I am very pleased about how my life has turned out. Other things where I look back and think I could have done better. So I just don't know. Hopefully there's still some more to come.
I hope so too. So you mentioned enjoying whiskey sea salt fudge, and now I have a nagging craving to try some. Whether I make it or buy it, I must have this.
Well, I hope you can get your hands on some and that you enjoy it. At least in Canada, it's much easier for you to get hold of maple syrup candy than for me here in England.
That's true. Yes, very true. So your readers will know that every use of that infamous language begins with the phrase, "you perceive." With much sadness, I perceive that our time is almost done. Genevieve, we are most grateful for you spending part of your evening with us. Our patrons will be quite thrilled to watch this interview. The Invisible Library was an imaginative, unforgettable series, and I'm eagerly awaiting Scarlet coming in the fall. It has been wonderful to meet and chat with you. I can't thank you enough. Stay safe, be happy.
Thank you. It has been great to meet and chat with you. I am very flattered. I'm astonished, to be honest, that I have readers in Canada, and I am very pleased, and I hope you continue to enjoy my works and that I continue to please you all. Take care, stay safe, be well.